I'm joined now by Amaka Anku, Africa head at Eurasia Group, to help us review some of our top stories in more detail. Good morning, Amaka. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great to see you back in your motherland. In the
Always
motherland.
happy to be back.
And speaking of the motherland, so this Chatham House report, there's a part of me that says, is this fear-mongering, or are they just really trying to predict the future? They basically say that American trade policy will disadvantage the continent, and their fears over AGOA, the Africa Growth Opportunity Act, which had previously opened the U.S. market to African exports. Tell us your take on this.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're not the only ones to think that Trump will be bad for Africa.
Okay.
We at Eurasia Group, we tend to be a little bit different. We don't think Trump will be bad for Africa. It's clear that there will be a lot less senior trips, senior U.S. official trips to Africa. Well, what are those trips doing?
Yeah.
I actually think that if you look at Trump's first term, he did a lot of things that could help the continent, like the capitalization of the DFC, up to doubled it from 30 billion to 60 billion.
The development finance institution of the US.
Exactly.
Yes.
That actually puts in money into projects. When it comes to AGOA, it has pretty strong congressional support across both sides, both Republican and Democratic. And I think that in the end it will survive, especially since China just extended duty-free access to 33 African countries.
Oh, right. So it wouldn't exactly be the altruistic one. It's more a kind of leverage against China.
If the Republicans and Trump people care about anything, it's
they
about
care
China.
about what China does.
Yeah,
so interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll be watching that. Let's move over to South Africa. A lot is happening. The DA has made some statements around the government of national unity. Are there some cracks in that marriage?
Not really. There's a lot of posturing. I think that they came out and said we're very committed to the government. I think that the DA is extremely incentivized to stay, as is the ANC. The one thing the DA exists for is to keep, I would say, is to keep the EFF out of government. If you are not in the coalition with the ANC, it will be forced to go into coalition with either the EFF or the MK. And Ramaphosa and the DA knows this, doesn't want to be in a coalition with the EFF or the DA.
Yeah.
So in the end, they're doing what they need to do to kind of please their constituents with the posturing. But I mean, to what end ultimately? What else is there to extract from this government of national unity if you're one of the partners in the government of national unity? Are they trying to get more position? Are they trying to push through a particular policy agenda? No, it's just about kind of showing your base that you are, you care about the things that they care about. Because this was on the back of Ramaphosa signing the expropriation bill, which a lot of people in the DA base are concerned about, the land expropriation bill, which we could talk about, but it's really just making it easier, at least on the government side, to maybe advance some of the land reform agenda. So the DA kind of has to come out and say that it's upset about some of those things, but they're not going to go in
hopefully
anyway.
they reduce some of the potential, friction here, because there are two things now being watched from a business and investment perspective. First of all is the fact that, yes, the Reserve Bank of South Africa did reduce the borrowing rate, but it warned very strongly about inflation risks on the horizon. And then the second thing is return to power outages and cuts. Just when we thought that South Africa had recovered from this decade-long season of power cuts. So tell us about these two things on the horizon.
Although it was a little, if you've had power cuts for 10 years, it's not just going to go away like that and never come back, ever. You see what I'm saying? So I do think it's concerning. Right now, they say it is just for the weekend, but in some ways, it's expected that there will be a few bumps along the road to recovery. And to be clear, even though there were no longer what they call load shedding, which is power outages, which is based on generation supply, electricity supply, they still had a lot of load reduction in the cities, which is sort of more about high density area, managing the transmission lines, right? So there were still problems. There's still problems that they have to sort through. And I think it's normal that it will take time to sort through all those problems.
Yeah, and in fact, when it seemed like things were gradually stabilizing, my mind went to, well, maybe some of the attempts to reform the state utility, ESCOM, was big. So, I mean, what has been the big change in terms of ESCOM?
Why they were able to have 10 months of stable
supplies. Yes.
So my understanding is it's a couple of things. One is they had new generation, right? That came online, but then there's also been better management.
Okay.
And some of it has been linked to the debt relief facility that Treasury, the South African Treasury gave them a couple years ago, which was linked to certain conditions, a part of the president's, reform program from the presidency. And there were I would say more management of the kinds of things that was causing sabotage, right? So they're going. Some of what happens in South Africa is like in the past, like you pay one of your vendors, and then to fix a problem, and then they kind of look away and they go and spoil the problem again, and then you pay them to come and fix it again. Sabotage.
Well, I mean, this story sounds very common to so many African countries. So, but let's focus on the inflation issue. Yeah. Why did the Reserve Bank, despite reducing rates, feel the need to issue this warning?
Yeah.
Almost as if to say, guys, we're just kind of preparing you for the inevitable.
Because of Trump.
Yeah.
And the fear
That's
of
Donald Trump and
Donald
his policies.
Trump. Yeah, U.S. president. He's been threatening tariffs on everybody, and obviously, if global inflation rises, it will make the Fed stop cutting interest rates. Already, U.S. markets expect hiking later this year, and if U.S. is hiking rates, dollar is stronger, it hurts the South African rand, and it will be very hard for them to keep cutting in that environment, right? So it's kind of trying to model what Trump will do, and warning that we might not be in an easing cycle for very long.
Clearly, Trump is getting under everyone's skin here. But let's focus on something else, which some might see as a bit controversial. But Nigeria's been talking about GDP rebasing for a while, and of course we need to review the CPI, the consumer basket. But let's focus on the GDP rebasing. What will be the main advantage of this, and why is it happening?
Yeah, I don't know why it's seen as controversial. Nigeria hasn't rebased in more than a decade.
2014, I think,
And you can't, I mean, the reason to do the rebasing is that your economic activity changes over time, right? Just like household spending patterns change over time. And if you don't know what it is now, you can't, design policy, right? So I think it's long overdue.
Yeah.
And it should give us all the clarity that is necessary to understand what's happening on the economy. And it will probably mean that the economy grows and we're now the biggest economy again.
I was going to say, everybody will be happy about that. All the clarity, but I was going to ask you to give me the clarity on what the likely outcome will be.
It's going to be a bigger economy.
Back on top of the leaderboard.
That would be my prediction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. And it's interesting you mentioned the CPI, because there's been jokes flying around about whether you need to introduce telecom tariffs, the cost of utility purchases by households into that basket, just because we know tariffs will be going up by about 50%. So it'd be interesting to see what that.
I think they're doing that though, right? They're rebasing the
CPI,
baskets as well, because spending patterns have changed. And people are spending more on telecoms than they were before. So I think they're also doing that.
Okay, thanks. Always great to have you on the show, Amaka. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
For having me.